All right, we are back to talk about Widow's Bay on Apple TV. First and second episodes titled Welcome to Widow's Bay and Lodging. These episodes both directed by Hiro Murai, first written by Katie Dippold and second written by Kelly Galuska. Widow's Bay is a small New England island town that's been surrounded by rumors of curses, supernatural events, and even cannibalism. Mayor Tom Loftus is a transplant who wants to modernize the town and attract tourism to the island. So he invites a travel reporter from the New York Times to come and learn more about their community. Mayor Loftus' goal seems to be to convince the locals of the town that the stories they hear are all false. Many of them do not believe him, and they openly distrust him. Because Loftus believes the town needs economic help, he perseveres, overlooks what they're concerned, and pushes forward with the story. When a local fisherman named Shep goes missing in the mysterious fog headed towards Widow's Bay, local resident Wick confronts Loftus about it. Shep does turn up again, and Loftus goes to see him in the hospital, but is attacked by a white-eyed Shep, seemingly proving some of the stories the locals believe about the island's curses. And in the second episode, an article has come out in the New York Times encouraging people to come to Widow's Bay. Tom agrees to stay a night in the captain's suite at the supposedly haunted inn in town to prove there's nothing wrong before tourists come. While there, he meets another visitor staying named William, who claims to be an engineer, but later that night attacks him as a clown. The next morning on the security footage, Tom is seen, but there's no one else who appears to be staying at the inn. I expected to like this show, being a big Matthew Rhys fan, sort of looking at the subject matter and what sort of the overtones of the show is like. So I expected to like it, but I really loved it so far. I really
Yeah,
like these first two episodes and am happy this is going to go 10, it sounds like.
yeah, me too. I'm enjoying it a lot. I'm really liking the tone of it, like the performances, the humor is great. I'm curious about where it'll go, and maybe we'll hold off on that a little bit. I mean, I am glad that we've got a 10 episode season. I guess after watching the first two episodes, I wonder how the story is going to develop, as it were. But let's talk
Yeah.
through. I guess let's start with some of the stuff about the tone. Um, from what we said already, I guess we both really enjoyed it. Any feelings at all that it's maybe almost a little too much,
Mm.
too quirky?
Um, I I don't know that I found it too quirky. I found it sort of filling a gap of something that maybe I didn't realize that I have needed or had missed for a long time. So we've done a lot of mystery, we've done some horror, we've done some, I mean, true science fiction, but just sort of this crossover between this comedy and horror nature of this show. I just found sort of the combination of the quirkiness and comedic sensibilities of these townspeople with some of the jump scares and some of the just eerie creeper things you see. I loved the combination.
All right. I think I agree, but it kind of occurred to me a little bit because it's almost in thinking about this show and preparing to talk about it with you and how to approach it for the podcast and so on. I guess this is one of my questions. It's a comedy horror show, which I really enjoy. It
Yeah.
does feel like almost every moment, every scene has some element of something kind of weird in a quirky way that might be scary, but it's also funny, and I enjoy that a lot. To what extent will it be like a mystery show? I guess is what I'm
Yeah.
wondering. Because through the first two episodes, it doesn't really quite feel like a mystery show to me, which is
Yeah.
interesting given the premise. You know what I mean there?
Yeah, and it is interesting sort of thinking about these first two episodes of what is this show going to do, or what is it trying to do? To your point, is it trying to solve a mystery of what these things are? I mean, I think after two episodes, it's pretty clear that these things are real, at least as real as we have been told that they are. And so, yeah, are we trying to uncover the mystery about what it is? Are we trying to stop them? Are we trying to convince Mayor Loftus that these things are actually happening? It's just sort of what do you want to do with this show? But I'm impressed with what they've done in the first little bit.
Yeah. But it kind of feels like it's not going to be those things, right? This is sort of what
Yeah.
I mean. There's so many things that some part of my brain wants to latch on to as a question or something. Like at the Historical Society, the woman
Mm.
says something like, "Oh, actually, there were 43 people." Tom, we don't need that story right now. Well, like, are we supposed to care? Are we supposed to want to be wondering what that story is? I don't know if we are beyond the joke of it. That in the background of everything, it's kind of like the cannibalism joke when the news article framed on the wall of the Historical Society says that they turned to cannibalism immediately, and Mayor Tom's like, well, no, I mean they're that's not true. Really, it's
Yeah.
on the wall of the historical society. Did they turn to cannibalism immediately? No, it took 4 days.
It took
You
4 days.
know, so a lot of stuff I feel like is sort of like that, where yeah, I mean, in part we're just gonna have to see where it goes. But my feeling coming out of these first two episodes is that it's not really a matter of trying to figure this stuff out. So
Mm.
I'm interested to see then what can create the momentum to carry the show forward.
It has been interesting some of the things that they have introduced. So ideas of things like what is it that took or possessed or whatever it did to Shep? Why can't or why don't they believe that natives can leave? So there's the idea of there are some mysteries there. It's not just what is the thing that's cursing the island, but what are the impacts of those things? So there are some layers here that we'll be able to peel back, I think, over the course of the season. And maybe, I have to think it was like, okay, why is this 10 episodes? But maybe that's the case. Or we're going to really explore in this in depth, perhaps.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. There are these questions, and even I put one on our show sheet notes here. Where was Shep? What happened to him? And so on. Um, I thought in particular after the first episode, there was some ambiguity about whether the supernatural was real or not. Maybe there's less
Yeah.
ambiguity after the second episode, but I think it's still there. I just don't know how much you can still play in this space. It almost makes me feel like where we're going is going to continue in kind of the space of there being a lot of indications that the supernatural curse stuff is actually real,
Yeah.
and Tom continuing to deny that and rationalize it away, because that's a sort of one of the sources of humor here, right? Um, so maybe the primary plot will be about the way that he wants to bring tourism to Widow's Bay, and it's just one thing after another indicating that things like, well, okay, but the inn's haunted by a murder clown, and imagining into that, it's harder to deny though after the second episode because of that security footage, and
Wow.
this is
That
something I
he
wanted to
can
talk about.
so quickly jump to maybe I was sleepwalking or there's some other explanation for that. And I think they did a good job in the first episode and a half, or first episode plus a little bit of the second, setting up why he's so committed to, it's going to be very, very hard to convince him otherwise. I- we know why he's trying to do that. Well, let's say we know what he's trying to do. Maybe we need to learn more about why he's trying to do it. If he hated Summers there so much, what is his interest in coming back here as mayor to, turn this place around? I think we'll get a little bit more since we've clearly learned that he has a lot of history in this island.
Yeah, and there are a couple of questions related to that. One is what happened to his wife, and presumably she
Hmm.
died in some way, but we don't really know how. And related to that, when they're talking about this idea that people who are born on the island can't leave, that's not Tom. He wasn't born there, right?
That's right.
Um, but his son was. And
His son
I'm
was,
not
yeah.
even asking quite, is this true that people born on the island can't leave? Although the reporter, whose name I didn't make a note of, does mention a couple of instances that people, told them about that check out where someone tried to leave and died pretty quickly or whatever. No, but I think the bigger question is, does Tom actually believe that? Will he not let his son leave? Does he feel like he needs to stay because his son can't leave? Does he buy into that at least enough? There are really kind of some indications that maybe he does, because otherwise, why wouldn't this
Yeah.
guy just take his son and move to Boston or something?
Yeah, that I think that's probably the draw that's keeping him here. I also wonder, as we think some explanation is needed in terms of what happened to his wife. How did she die? Is he trying to figure out, did the island do something to her, or is he trying to disprove that the island did something to her? Well, everybody thinks, well, she died because of a curse or because of some sort of supernatural element or because of the island doing something to her. He's there in a sense, not just because his son can't leave, but also in a sense that he wants to disprove that this happened. and show that, oh, none of this stuff is actually real.
Yeah, I mean, I guess it may be something like that. I wonder how much the show will explore that kind of question. It certainly occurs to me he's not, I mean, because he doesn't just stay there. He decides to run for mayor unopposed, apparently. And
Yeah.
so there, it's like there's this tension in his character where on the one hand he kind of hates this place and all these superstitious people, but on the other hand he cares about it, loves it, and wants to help it with the tourism and all of that. And
Yes.
I mean, I think that's all coherent, but it's also more than anything else, I expect the show to continue kind of mining that for humor. How we have this guy who, of course, at a distance from the story, we would probably be more on his side and thinking like, well, yeah, like of course ghosts aren't real and stuff like that,
Yeah.
like the reporter.
Exactly.
Um, but if he's going to be continually confronted with evidence that something really is happening and continue to deny it, um, yeah, it's one of the sources of the humor here. It also does seem you mentioned the possibility that maybe something happened with his wife that people have superstitions
Yeah.
around or whatever, and that would be interesting. But we should also note that Wick, played by the inimitable Stephen Root here, seems to be saying, "Oh no, something is happening now," right? Like the island's always cursed and weird, but
Yeah.
now it's coming to a head. It's woken up. This is a haunt, you know. And there are some other indications of that with the fog, I guess, but also the church bell, where this is a dangling thread we're left with after the second episode, right? Where
Yes.
the
Yes.
priest, whatever his name is, says that bell could not have rung. He goes and checks it out. It's chained up so that it can't ring. But then he's got this like letter to him about what he has to do if the bell ever rings. Like, I hope this never comes up. And we don't go further,
Yeah.
but I imagine we will, next week or whatever.
I like the little nuggets that are dropped about the history here. Obviously, Wick provides a lot of exposition about history. We see him as a representative of the people of this, the locals of this island. But then these little things like that, where someone has encountered something has happened to them, so much so that they need to write a letter, I guess, to the next priest in line or the person who's taking over that job. That this is what has to happen if this bell ever goes off. And so we do get these little nuggets of things that we're surely going to come back to. I don't know if we'll come back to 4 days until cannibalism, but there is, sort of this idea of the things that would be helpful to help us learn more about this story. And I think that bell is a big one.
Yeah, I do think so. I mean, that's what I mean, sort of. There's so much that you have to kind of try to sort out a bit what's significant that we're going to circle back to and what isn't.
Yeah.
And
Yes.
maybe we'll
Yeah.
be surprised, maybe something will factor in a way that we didn't see coming that was kind of an off the cuff remark or whatever. But let's talk about a little bit more about what happens at the end in a couple of ways.
Mhm.
Because with the security footage, I do think that that's a pretty strong indication that the inn really is haunted by the murder clown, who's again played by the great Tim Baltz, right? Righteous Gemstones, BJ comes to mind, and he's great here in his role. And as it plays out, certainly we're led to feel like he is a real person, and they play the Daddy's Home board game, which I wanted to at
That
least
is
hit on. I don't know how much there is to dig into here, but I found those board games to be hilarious. I'm gonna chime in at all on that, maybe in particular Daddy's Home, but there's also the Run card game where it's like,
Yeah.
not
Well,
yet,
that was like
not yet, not yet,
it was like a duck, duck, goose, but cards or something. Yeah. Yeah.
not yet, not yet, not yet, Run. And then the one was like a teeth game, and it just had a pair of pliers at the bottom. So there was a lot of funny stuff, but the game that they play was maybe the most amusing because it seems like this game, Daddy's Home, is all about avoiding getting beaten by your drunken father.
Uh-oh, Dad had a bad day at work. Go down to the basement.
Like, roll to see if the neighbor's home. Yay, yes. Um, but they're pretty subtle about how they don't actually ever say it explicitly. I think it's pretty clear implicitly
Yeah.
that that's what the game's about. Anyway, that's feeling real, right?
Yeah.
And it culminates in William saying, well, he gets really dark for a minute first, but then saying, finish your list and prove these people wrong. Ghosts aren't real.
Right, right,
And
right.
that leads Tom back to the crawl space, which, for the record, I agree with his initial reaction when he goes down there and says, absolutely not. Not because I believe in murder clown ghosts, but it's like, no way am I crawling into that
No.
cobwebby old kind of crawl space.
When you're there essentially by yourself, yeah, there's no way I'm going in there.
No way. But maybe that's not rational in the real world or whatever. But anyway, he sucks it up. He goes in there, and then it's like William appears at the opening to the crawl space, and then like turns into the murder clown chasing at him. Then we cut to Tom waking up in bed. So there's some kind of inconsistency here that I don't know how to make consistent because the fact that he wakes up in bed would make you tempted to say, oh, well, it was all just a dream,
Yeah.
right? But then you have him on the security footage sitting there like he's playing that board game with himself. That's really weird, right? He throws out the idea that he was sleepwalking. I guess maybe it could all be a dream, but then, I mean, the biggest stumbling block in interpreting this to me is what about the crawl space stuff? You can think of
Yeah.
that as a dream, but he didn't really go into the crawl space, or what?
I
I don't
think
know.
that
Any further thoughts here?
I think all of these things happened. At least that's my initial impression. All these things happened. Some of them were documented and recorded. You know, he was actually in the crawl space, and whatever Willie the clown was able to do to him, it rendered him whatever unconscious, but he was able to get him back into his bed. We don't know there will be long-lasting effects of his interaction with this or what happened to him there. But my impression after watching all of that, because we're introduced to the not only the video footage, but then what we see with the innkeeper going into the room says that no, all of this stuff is happening, whether he believes it or not, or whether he can recall it or not.
Okay, interesting, because that was maybe part of what I was stuck on is if we treat it as all real, how to get back into bed and wake up in
Yeah.
bed. So you're suggesting maybe this worked that okay, that all happened. There really is William the murder clown ghost who's able to interact with physical reality, which will be
Mhm.
indicated
Yeah.
by the fact that he was rolling the dice, playing the board game, and all of that.
Yep.
So after scaring the bejesus out of Tom, and I don't know if there's some other element to that. Tom is unconscious and he drags Tom out, takes him back to his room, puts him in bed.
Yeah. I mean,
I guess.
I don't know if we're going down the road of things like possession or things like that. I mean, if you're going back to Shep, something is inside of him. Something is doing something to him that's forcing him to not only his eyes but to become violent and attack Tom this way. So, is it prolonged exposure to these things? Is it something else? So something happens to you. I don't know if this is sort of the first step that Tom has taken to that.
Yeah, I guess. I did feel like there was more ambiguity with Chef, but at least in retrospect, it's much more tempting to buy into it. In other words, you have Wick telling the story about how people's eyes turn white and something about the revenants of sailors and yada, yada, yada. And then later, Chef's eyes turn white and he attacks Tom.
Yeah.
They're still, I mean, that's easier to rationalize to me somehow. Like maybe somehow because of his medical condition, something, is going on with his eyes and
Yeah.
he
Yeah.
just
It could
kind of
be.
freaks out violently, irrationally, or something.
Yeah.
Um, I don't know. I mean, in retrospect, maybe we do buy into that as well. And you did raise an interesting possibility that maybe Tom at this point will be possessed by William or something like that. Maybe he doesn't know that yet. And
Yeah.
is it wrong to kind of hope so because I want to see more Tim Baltz?
I absolutely want to
Do you
see.
think we'll
Yeah.
see him anymore?
That's a good
Do you think
question.
we'll get any more William?
Mm. Yes, I do. Well, yeah, I think with Tim Baltz, yes, I think we will, in some capacity. I do wonder with. that character with the wife, this sort with 10 episodes, this sort of is telling me that we're going to get a flashback episode at some point. We see the
Mm,
origins of some of these things, see what's happened. I bet that somebody like Tim Ball shows up in an episode like that.
all right. Yeah, we'll see. I'm getting a little sick of flashback episodes, but mm, it's not unlikely. Because you're right, there are
Yeah.
some questions about the past, and more, it seems like people making TV shows, when there are questions about the past, they want to say at some point in the ninth episode, we're going to go back to the past.
Yeah.
Um, Speaking of which, in terms of creators behind the scenes, I want to say a brief word about Hiro Murai, who's the director of both these episodes. I'm not sure if he directed the whole series or not. Usually TV shows have multiple directors, but not always. Um, and I haven't done that level of research yet. We do have two different writers, but Katie Dippold, I believe, is the main. Anyway, I want to talk about Hiro Murai.
Yeah. So
Sorry, I just had a little
I
feedback there
actually
as
have
I
to
came
look.
on the recording. Go ahead.
So on here, Mariah, I actually had to go look him up because I knew I recognized the name, but wasn't immediately triggering what exactly that he has been. Is it? Oh, sorry, is it a he? Is it she? I can't recall. Hiravari is a
Uh,
he.
I double checked the man. Mhm.
Yeah. Yes, he. Okay. So, and I went back and looked at this roster: Atlanta, Snowfall, Barry, Station 11, The Bear, Mr. and Mrs. Smith. Now, Widow's Bay. This is. I mean, that's a quite a hit list that this guy has. I did not realize it was so prolific, and it's pretty wide across genres as well.
Yeah, I believe a couple of episodes of Legion. Also, a lot of these things are just dipping in for an episode or two. He also directed a number of music videos. Maybe most prominently, what stood
Interesting.
out to me was Childish Gambino and the
Uh,
video for This Is America in particular. Have you seen that video? It goes hard, man.
oh, I have not, but that makes sense with the Atlanta connection.
Okay, yeah. So, I mean, I don't know. I think good director, all of that. I just wanted to kind of hit on that. People listening maybe, weren't aware. Similar to you, I think, from what you said, Ryan, it was one of those things where I saw the name and I thought, I recognize that name. And then where do I
Yes.
recognize that name from? And went to IMDb and so on. So I definitely think we're in good hands here with this series on that front. Um, let's see. Oh, we wanted to talk about the captain suite a little bit and how the innkeeper it feels like his he was in there longer than he was or something. I mean, he's like
Yeah, so
destroyed the room in 30 seconds.
it's not just that he's dealing with something supernatural in there. It's he's dealing with they closed the door for 10 seconds, and to him it felt like an eternity, like he was hungry for his next meal when he came out, asking if you're gonna close the door for 30 seconds, can you give me some food before I go in? And then it seems like after 30 seconds he's been in there for years. So something timey-wimey is going on here.
I thought it was funny too because it wasn't even 10 seconds, right? They like go into the room for 10 seconds and they close the door and the sheriff goes 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And then they open the door. It wasn't 10 seconds. And so the innkeeper's denying it. I don't know. I guess for monetary reasons, he doesn't want them to shut it down or whatever begin
Right.
that he's planning to make some money off of. But something's going on with him that he's holding back. And then they see because a part of what he did is like pull some of the wallpaper back. And now the rationalization is, oh, there's black mold in the room, which I'm not an expert on by any means, but I think Wick is probably right that you wouldn't start hallucinating that fast.
No. You're not going to get exposed. You're not going to get infected. You're not going to start hallucinating or anything like that over the course of 30 seconds. Nor is like a room going to deteriorate that fast. So yeah, that's just another mystery introduced here.
Yeah. So how much do we follow up on that as a level of mystery? Again, that's one of my questions as we proceed here. To what degree is it a mystery show or
Yeah,
something where we ought to even be asking those questions as opposed to um, a horror comedy show where the plot really is more about things like Tom trying to get tourism to Widow's Bay and all the supernatural stuff keeps happening in the background. I think
yeah.
it might be more like the latter when it comes down to it, but
I
definitely
saw
enjoying it
one
so far.
review. I saw one review that I thought was interesting, at least in terms of you often hear this like, oh, this show is this meets this, or something like that. Well, one of these reviews, I think if I saw this correctly at The Guardian, called this show Mayor of Easttown meets Schitt's Creek. Well, I can see the Schitt's Creek sort of small town, quirky sensibility side of it. Mayor of Easttown is like one of the most prominent and interesting HBO mysteries whodunit that they've had in the last decade. So I do wonder if we're going to get some elements of we need to figure this out or figure out what's going on here, combined with this sort of quirkiness that we've talked about already.
Yeah, that's interesting. Why wouldn't you bring in Twin Peaks or something? I mean, look, I don't want to compare the show to Twin Peaks for various reasons,
Yeah,
but I could see, like, if someone made that comparison, I could at least understand what they were talking about. Small town, quirky characters, weird stuff's going on. It's like Twin Peaks, you know what I mean? It's meaningfully different, I think, in part because from the very beginning, Twin Peaks is such a mystery. Who killed Laura Palmer and all of that? You don't have that yet,
yeah.
right? You don't have the dead girl on the beach kind of thing. At least not yet. I don't know if we'll get it. So I guess that's part of what I'm wondering about. But that's interesting. I mean, if they mention neither one of those shows involves the supernatural, unless I'm forgetting something,
Nope,
right? Schitt's Creek and
nope,
Maybe.
nope, nope. They don't. I do wonder
Um,
if is does Shep die and that becomes sort of the well, I don't know. What could become the mystery other than just what is this thing? That seems sort of very obtuse and not really a direction you can just follow all the way to the end.
yeah, I mean, I suppose they might return to Shep in episode three, but they didn't really in episode two, I don't think. If I'm remembering how the episodes break correctly, I watched them back to back. But, I do recall there's the point where Tom's asking for the autopsy and the medical examiner says that'll be tomorrow. I don't think we followed
Right.
up on that. So there could
Yeah.
be something
Yeah.
weird in the autopsy that becomes relevant. I mean, there's sort of a question of what happened to him. But then to what extent can we rationalize that away by saying, oh, well, he got lost out in the fog in the bay overnight and got hypothermia or something, or
Yeah.
I don't
Yeah.
know. I don't know. I don't know what it would be. I don't know what it would be. I'm just not sure how much the show that's part of what I've been trying to say though. I don't know for sure after two episodes exactly what I'm supposed to be caring about and what I'm not in those sorts of terms, right?
Exactly. Exactly. I think that
Um,
we will, at least I hope we focus in on that in episode three. I love these first two. We could focus in on what we're going to do, what we need to care about in episode three. That would, I think, put it right in line to where we want it to go.
yeah, I agree. One thing I wanted to ask you before we wrap up here, because I think you may be, based on past conversations, more versed in Stephen King than I am. But it was enough to ping my radar a little bit. Of course, we've got the sort of northeast setting going
Yeah.
on,
Yep.
maybe the
Yep.
fog. We got a
Yeah.
haunted
The
inn.
mist,
We got a murder
mist. Yeah.
clown. Are there more Stephen King allusions that I'm missing here? Other things that you noticed that put you somewhat in mind of Stephen King stories?
Yeah. I mean, to one you've already said, when he, as Willie the Clown, bends down and starts charging at Tom, I mean, that is completely Pennywise. I mean, absolutely 100%. Just sort of this
Right. Yeah.
wildness, just sort of just joining, just sort of running at him, but just absolutely. I mean, if you go watch any of those films or Welcome to Derry or any of these things, it's absolutely what you're going to get. Yes, obviously, Stephen King, most of his stuff takes place in Maine. We've got The Mist, which references the fog. We've got, yeah, small town. We've got, locals that all sort of know something that are a part of this, and there's things that they can't explain. Things that, Welcome to Derry, a big point of that show was the thing that keeps you there, and if you try to leave, it brings you back, right? So we get that with this
Hmm.
show. So it's just a lot of things tying in there.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. So something to keep an eye out for. Maybe more little Easter eggs or whatever. But
Yeah.
it's interesting because I feel like part of the humor maybe even stems from, okay, well, let's take all of this stuff and just we're gonna throw it all together. You know what I mean? It's just everything all at once, sort of. Oh no, there's a pet cemetery. Whatever.
Yeah.
So
If that shows up, or we get a Cujo dog running around, yeah, then we'll really know.
Yeah, but I mean, I don't know if we will actually. It's felt a little subtler than that, but of course,
Yeah.
even for me, the murder clown was enough to make me start thinking about it, Pennywise, as you
Yeah.
mentioned, and then there's the haunted inn, and there's mention of like a New
Hmm.
Year's Eve party and stuff like that, and so anyhow, let's see. The other thing you put on our sheet, I don't know if you want to say anything further about it, that they don't have cell phone reception, they don't have Wi-Fi in the town.
Just
Maybe
that,
I,
that's going to come into play. We
yeah.
there's this town is sort of it's turned back in time a little bit. They have computers and internet that all looks very like early 2000s. Have to rely on landlines. They can't reach the outside. How much of that has to do with the supernaturalness of it, but that's clearly just going to come up at some point and be be something that matters as we go down the road.
Yeah, or I mean, it already matters as a part of the setting, if nothing else. So I wonder how much it'll factor in. It did remind me a little bit of the time I spent on Mackinac Island. I spent several summers there, right around, I don't know, maybe the last time I did a summer working on Mackinac Island, I was 2002 or something like that. People
Yeah.
aren't familiar with this. Mackinac Island's with like between the two peninsulas of Michigan, and no cars, although they've got like a fire truck and stuff like that. But it's only eight
Yeah.
miles around, so people ride bikes or walk, and there are horses and all of that. But also, when I was there, basically like cell phones didn't work, or
Okay.
if you potentially could get a cell phone that would work if you directly got a phone from the Alltel in St. Ignace, in the area.
Yeah.
But you brought your phone from somewhere else, like where you lived, it didn't work.
Wouldn't
Um,
work.
and I mean, I really enjoyed the time that I spent there, and that was part of it. To where the last time I was there for a visit, which was I don't know, maybe like 2016 or something like that. All of a sudden, everyone's walking around with smartphones.
Yeah.
Now everything, and it just didn't
Yeah.
feel the same. The vibe of the place didn't feel the same because part of the tourism there is precisely like you don't have roads with cars, you've got horse-drawn carriages, you've got to look out for the manure on the road and all that kind of thing. And
Yes.
so then putting iPhones into that, it messed up the experience for me at least. So
Yeah. That's a good
maybe
point.
there could be that level of local politics of the people there not wanting this stuff. So
Not
I
wanting
imagine
that.
it'll
Yeah.
come into one way or the other, whether it's that or um, related to the curse and supernatural. We'll see
Right.
how it might factor in. All right, good. Anything else you want to hit on here before we wrap up?
No, just glad we're going down the road with this show. Looking forward to episode 3 a lot.
Yeah, I'm definitely enjoying it so far. We'll see how long they tend to be. I know there was a difference. The first episode was longer than the second one. So are we going to
Hmm.
settle in more in the half hour range or the closer to an hour? I'll be curious to see that as well. I haven't checked as of yet. Regardless, we'll go week to week here, episode by episode. So thanks for joining us. Hopefully you've enjoyed the podcast. Hopefully you'll join us next week. Please do leave a good rating, review, all that good stuff. If you are on YouTube listening to this, hit the thumbs up. Please subscribe to our YouTube channel. Greatly appreciate it. You can follow TV Obsessive on social media. If you search for TV Obsessive, you should find us. And be sure to check out tvobsessive.com where you can find articles on all sorts of TV shows. And at the moment, I'm writing on For All Mankind. Ryan's writing on Daredevil Born Again. Other things coming in the future. We've got a lot going on this summer. So please do check out the site. And as for the podcast, we'll be back with you next week.
All right. We will see you then.